Kia ora, Nita. I see you there. Are you okay to keep an eye on the chats? Awesome, thank you. We'll just wait a little bit longer and then we'll get started.
Hey, Kim. Hello.
Hi, Nada. I saw you there.
Oh, it's so good to see you. I can see you going a little bit grey, you know.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't go away, do I? I just.
That's not a bad thing, Kim.
No. We need you badly. Hey, Kathryn. Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. Hi.
Hi, Nina.
Hi. Long time no see.
Yeah, it really is.
Hi.
Okay. Right, well, maybe we'll get started now. So kia ora, everybody. I'm just going to start with our opening karakia. So, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. Ehi aka ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he houhu, tihe Māori ora. So welcome everybody. Ko Siobhan aho. I'm the Associate University Librarian for Customer Experience down here at Otako Whakaihu Waka, the University of Otago. And I want to welcome both of our guests today, Kathryn and Kim. I thought that we missed a marvellous marketing opportunity to call this Kath and Kim, but nobody would go with me. But at any rate, they are going to be speaking to us about open data and the various systems and supports and things that we can use in terms of our open source software. And I think this is going to be a very interesting talk, particularly for those of us who are thinking about moving into this space. And also for those of us who are now having to think strategically about whether this is a space we want to stay in. I believe that Kathryn and Kim will give us a lot of food for thought. So I'm just going to do the formal introductions for Kathryn and Kim and read their bio, and then I'll be handing over to Kathryn to get the show started. So Kathryn Tyree is the Koha Services Manager at Catalyst IT. She's over 12 years, over 12 years, this has grown from supporting a dozen Koha libraries using Koha ILS to around 100 libraries. They are now expanding to other open source systems such as DSpace and ViewFind Discovery. Kathryn has experience with a variety of support models for open source software and their adoption in tertiary institutions. Kathryn will be our first speaker. And our second speaker is Kim Shepherd, who's a freelance developer in Auckland with over 15 years working with repositories and 23 years of systems and development experience. He has been a member of the DSpace committee team since 2009. People who are on the DSpace mailing list and are interested in DSpace can see his contribution over the mailing list. And there's also a link to his profile, and there's also a link to Kathryn's LinkedIn, which I will put both in the chat. At any rate, I will now hand over to you, Kathryn. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I am just going to set a presentation going and share my screen. Hopefully my face will still be in the corner, so you're not just talking to a few pages of presentation rather than a person. And I might turn it off at some point if I just think it's better to just get rid of it altogether. So thank you so much for having me today. It is really lovely to be invited. So special thanks to Farasat who extended the invite and arranged it for me. So I'm just going to hit share my screen and selecting a window. I have to say all of this out loud to make sure I do the right thing. And allow. Oh. It's not quite what I was. Oh, here we go. So can everyone see, I need someone to say it out loud. Can everyone see a presentation and also see me, or just the slides? I'm just curious about that.
I can see both you and the presentation.
Awesome, thank you. So I'll get started. I've given, I've only got 10 slides or something. I've given this talk the title Open Source Support for Tertiary Libraries in Aotearoa. And I really wanted to broaden the discussion from being about just one piece of software to be about what open source support models can look like, because I think there's some misconceptions around it being one thing or the other, or anything in particular, actually. So I'll sort of delve into those things a wee bit. The other thing you might notice, so there's my name, Kathryn Tyree. Since I sent my bio in, I've been able to change my job title a little bit from saying Services Manager for Koha to something broader, a new name, which is Rōpū Kohinga. And so I'll just tell you briefly about that. Our team, because we have expanded into supporting other kinds of products, we have given our team a new name that better reflects the breadth of what we've been doing and how we've been working with libraries and other organisations. And yeah, so Rōpū Kohinga is the name of our team now. That translates just to simply collections team. And we chose not to use the English for one reason, is that it's so closely paired with the idea of debt collection, which is an extremely negative topic. And Rōpū
Sorry,
Kohinga
Kathryn.
Yes.
Sorry, I may have put you slightly wrong, because I'm just looking at the chat and somebody says we only see the top half of your screen. Now, I thought that was the full screen. We've got a lot of white space at the top. Is that meant to be here or not?
No.
I think if you just scroll down your screen a little, we'll be fine.
Yeah, that's not, I'm going to just go start from the first slide again.
Yeah, that's definitely, we're definitely seeing the full slide now. At least I think we are.
You can see all the white space around the edge though, can't you?
Yes, but at least, I mean,
it's not
if
going to
somebody else wants to comment as to whether it's clear enough, I think it's clear enough now, but that's just me.
What's happened is it's not in presentation mode, so I won't be able to flick to the next slide, so that doesn't work. So I am going to stop very briefly and slideshow. What happens is when I click start from first slide, it's not.
Well, we're seeing the first slide.
But I can't go to the next one because I'm not in presentation mode.
Okay. I'm sorry to have interrupted your flow there. I apologise.
No, that's okay. It's better that than for me to carry on and you're not to see what's in front of me. So I'll just take a moment and click new share and see. I'm not sure that it's going to let me do it. I know, I'll select entire screen. There we go. And then select allow, and you'll see Inception for a moment while I switch to the other view. So excuse me while I do that. So you have an Inception moment, and then I'm going to go to my presentation, start from the first slide, and you should just see what my computer's doing at the moment. Momentarily, it should switch us into looking at a presentation rather than. Here we go. So now do you have a full screen view of the presentation rather than looking at my sort of?
No, at the moment we've just got a blank screen, a black screen within the middle saying Kathryn Chi tree
Ah.
has started screen sharing.
Because I selected full screen, so it should show me. Oh, well, never mind. I'm going to instead, I'm going to just flag slides, stop sharing. We'll try one last time. And if it doesn't work, I'm just going to go ahead without slides at all. Allow.
Yes, so far no luck, I'm afraid.
Okay. In that case, I just would really like to. Never mind. Okay, I've just flagged slides altogether. We'll get rid of those. Close
I mean,
that
we
up.
could certainly share your slides afterwards.
Yeah, they're more just illustrative, rather than they're not covered in content that you need to see. They're just kind of supporting.
Okay.
So anyway, where did I get to? So I introduced myself, and I was just letting you know that we've broadened the scope of our team to Rōpū Kohinga, which means collections team, and we chose that we would only use that in Te Reo Māori because the English version has such a negative view being related to debt collections, and we also are expanding into any collections of digital or physical things that people need to manage with software as the scope of what we're offering. And that might be a particular product, or it might be a question and a sort of piece of consultation around how do we solve this problem that we have. And we'll just use open source software, whatever the right choice might be to solve the problem. It might just be one little thing. It might be a full installation, and it's just broadens it to being a discussion about anything, any kind of collection at all. Yeah, and so we're at one team. So Rōpū Kohinga is one team at Catalyst, and Catalyst is about 200 and something staff in New Zealand and about 300 worldwide. Supporting any kinds of open source software, and there's a real range of support models in what we do. So we wanted to illustrate that to you today. I'm just going
hang on, it's working.
Just
Yeah,
then?
That seemed, we're still looking at your screen, and it just went to the slides. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's still, I think I just closed it. That's what's so weird. Because now.
Oh, see, I keep seeing a giant delayed me, which is really weird.
Oh, that was because I'm flicking between views. That's so weird and strange. Slide. Is there somewhere here? Okay. Thank you for telling me. Unfortunately, I don't. Does the slide just say open source support for tertiary libraries in Aotearoa?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know that I can.
What if you just exported it as a PDF and flicked through the pages? Would that work?
Yeah, that's what I would often do. It's just so weird that it's the screen share that just doesn't like it. But yeah, okay, I might just very briefly. Oh, sorry for everyone else who's watching this as a recording, but at least you can fast forward this part while we try and sort that out. Okay, I'm going to PDF it. Thanks, Kim.
This is actually a lovely demonstration in collective problem solving. So everything's a teachable moment.
Indeed. So, I'll just check that into my downloads. It's not what I'm doing. What can you see at the moment, just out of interest? Can you see me mousing around?
Yes.
Okay.
We can see everything that you're doing. And in fact, probably could do the presentation in this mode because I can see your slide pretty clearly, even though it's not on a display or a screen.
Yeah, it's just that in this view you only see one slide and I can't change to the next one. Oh, it's so frustrating. So
Why don't you try and do the slideshow now and see what happens?
Okay, true, because it was working before. So let's
Yeah.
just, and it did just come to life at some point. So you tell me when it goes to full screen again, and we'll carry on.
Okay.
All right, cool. So when we're talking about open source support, I really wanted to talk about how it can be a whole lot of different things depending on your situation. And so, for example, all of the libraries out there who are using DSpace might be having it supported in a different way. So there might be some libraries who their IT department hosts their DSpace and then provides some upgrades or response and support as needed. Or there might be some libraries out there who have DSpace externally hosted and they get support from a vendor. There might be libraries who have it internally hosted and get support from a vendor, when there might be some who have some other arrangement. And so I just really wanted to sort of dispel that myth that open source means that you have to do it all yourself and that proprietary vendors take care of everything software as a service, because it's the support model is not the important part of the discussion when you're choosing proprietary or open source. So with open source, it's really about a serviceware or a software selection where you're not paying for a license to use the software at all and relying on a vendor to make changes to it that you might want. Instead, you're paying for services or providing services internally from your organization that meet the needs of your library or your organization by the support model that you choose. So the most common one in Catalyst for my team, of course, is Koha. And so we have a lot of cloud-based services, and there's sort of a full support model, which is chosen by all of the tertiary libraries that we work with. So AUT and WinTech and Toyohomai being the largest ones. And so they'll have a service where they're fully hosted by us. They're hosted in the Catalyst cloud. They're guaranteed data sovereignty. They're guaranteed that their data will stay in New Zealand and also under New Zealand jurisdiction, which is an important distinction from being hosted in New Zealand, but also having a whole lot of data processing happening offshore. It will include things like all of your upgrades, all of your minor updates, your security support will be proactive. We'd work with your IT department on integrations or any third parties and just take care of it as a whole attentive system of support that would provide for a monthly fee, just like a proprietary vendor. We charge a fee, we have a contract, and we make some promises. So we'll say things like, we promise that your system will be available 99.5% of the time, and we'll respond to you within 2 hours, and we'll respond to you within these support hours, and we'll have, if it's a very high availability important system, we might have a whole set of, you might have your hosted system here and then have what we call redundant architecture. So if in the case that your system died, it automatically fails over and the second set of architecture comes to life, so you don't lose access to your system. And what I'm describing there is sort of what would be the most expensive option when it comes to open source support. And you wouldn't necessarily see a huge cost saving between proprietary and open source when you choose the most full service model that you can possibly get. And one thing we find is that when libraries go out to tender, they'll ask for everything under the sun, and 99 out of 100 things are must-haves. And it makes the answer we have to give in a tender response sometimes prohibitively expensive. So maybe even more expensive than a proprietary model. But then if you can take a step back and ask for, say we drop off the redundant architecture, which is the failover in the event the system goes down and you have this automatic system waiting in the background to come to life. If we took that away, well, we're not paying for 2 sets of infrastructure anymore, so the cloud fees might go down by half, and then we might put some more money because, hey, we go, okay, the system hardly ever goes down, we get pretty good response from our vendor, so let's put more money into support for our staff, or training sessions or enhancements or working on integration. So I just wanted to give a sense of the breadth of service that is available for any open source system if you pay a vendor to support you. And what I really wanted to do there is just dispel that myth that working with open source software is harder. It shouldn't be harder, but you just have to get the right support model in place to suit your organization. The next part I wanted to tap into is, so I did get permission from AUT to talk about the way we support their library Te Mā Tāpuna and how that's grown over the years. So in 2019, we started working with AUT by implementing Koha, and it was a fully hosted support arrangement, so kind of towards that end of full support that we discussed. And they still made a really big cost saving from the previous vendor to moving to Koha, but got a pretty high level of support that they've been really satisfied with over the last few years. And we always had in mind that, so one neat thing about AUT, and you can go and look at their, they've got a page about library technology on their website, on the library website. The neat thing is they do have a preference for open source software, and they had a bunch of other systems they look after themselves that potentially over time Catalyst was going to support them with, and that's what's happened. And so we have a real, even with one relationship that we have with AUT, we don't support all of the systems in the same way. So Koha has this kind of hosted, cloud hosted, full support, upgrades included, everything's taken care of kind of service. And then there's a bucket of support time on tap for the library team to ask us for whatever they need. And so that's how we do it for Koha. And then how we support their DSpace in their VuFind is that historically AUT have hosted that for themselves and provided some support in-house. And that's gone really well. And they had some in-house developers and engineers to support that. And what happened is they over time had less capacity inside the organization and needed to seek more capacity from us. And it was perfect because we'd already had this established working relationship. And we could just sort of go, okay, well, we'll take what we know about each other and the way we work, and we will agree on the right support model for supporting these other two products. And they're still hosted by AUT, but we've got remote access, we're running upgrades, we're providing support and fixing things. And because we've got that knowledge of more than one system, when we get to doing things like integrations, it's a lot easier for us to work together. So that's been really fantastic. And we're really looking forward to, in the future, that growing. And so we're always talking about, oh, did you see this open source tool? I wonder if that would replace this proprietary thing you're using. Or, Koha's got a CMS module now. Do you think you might want to use CMS pages for getting more content out to your users? All those kinds of things. Oh, you were looking at maybe using Coral for electronic resource management. Oh, hey, Koha's got an electronic resource management module now. Should we use that? And because we just have that broad knowledge of all the different tools that are already in use or potentially coming down the line, we've got that conversation open and the ability to work together with a lot more, with a whole lot more momentum and traction on new things rather than always starting from scratch. And so I kind of wanted to talk about one project in particular for AUT that has kind of really taken us to a new phase in our relationship of working together, which has been really exciting. So there's a new initiative at AUT, and it has been given the name EAR, and EAR is the Māori pronoun for they, them, or it's a genderless pronoun. And the EAR project is an example of where the library has used library platforms to support the strategic objectives of the university and collaborate with academics and just kind of done all the things we always hope that we can support libraries to do. And so EAR is, if you want to have a look sometime, it's ia.aut.ac.nz. And what it is this part of the initiative is called EAR, the Rainbow Collection. And this system is, in the front, you're seeing a VuFind, which is an open source discovery layer. And the information that VuFind is harvesting is pulling from the AUT DSpace. And what we did with AUT was they gave us a really open brief of, we've got this stuff in DSpace, but we want to present it in a way that reaches a wider audience. And what AUT's goal is to celebrate LGBTQIA plus communities and rainbow communities within AUT and reach out into the wider communities in Aotearoa and share research as an open access university, and of course invite more students to feel comfortable and potentially study at AUT in the future. So that was really what was behind the initiative. And IR is just one example of something that was achieved on a relatively modest budget. It was achieved in a pretty small time frame, like just in a few months. And we started with where we're going to display this DSpace stuff to make it more accessible to the general public. And Catalyst sort of ran a discovery type phase where we looked at a few options, and we ended up suggesting a product that AUT were already using that we knew about, which was ViewFind. And it met sort of some future goals around bringing in content from different channels and sharing it all in one place. So it did a lot of different things all at one time. And because we had these sort of shared values around AUT being an open access university and open source software gelling really well with that, combined with our established relationship, we sort of don't have to get momentum up when we're starting a new project together. We can just be like, awesome, let's schedule that in. We're in a high trust situation. We can do a discovery phase and we can move forward. We can move forward and get a whole lot more done in the budget than we could if we were starting right from the beginning. So yeah, that's been a real highlight for us this year, and I wanted to have a chance to mention it. But I think in the future, there's probably a whole talk in here with maybe AUT and Catalyst together sometime. So I don't know if there's anyone from AUT on the line, but I know there's some enthusiasm for talking about it at some stage. Yeah, so what I hope has perhaps come out of this is that with open source software, the support model can be different things for different products, even within one vendor customer relationship. We can look at everything. We might go, this one needs a really high lot of support, whereas this one we can live with paying, a third of the price because we know it's not one that we need to pay full price and high availability for. So we don't just give everything the same sort of broad brush approach. We look at each one and look at how much money it makes sense to spend in that particular instance. And the more kind of understanding we have of the technology picture within an organization, the more we can say, oh, do we really want to spend the money over here? Because we're working on this thing over here that is really a lot more important. Maybe we'll just hold that bit back and we'll spend it over here and juggle things around. So it's been a real pleasure to work with AUT in that way. And we're really looking forward to some more of our Koha libraries working with us and other products, and also hearing from organizations about an open-ended problem. How can we solve it? And looking for open source solutions for those that are right to the situation. Yeah, but it takes us to halfway through this session. So I think I've hopefully done the right thing by pulling it in there. I'm really sorry for the slides before. I will share them later. They're just some nice pictures, really, that would have been nice to see along with all the faces. But people were at the centre of everything we're doing. So I think hopefully that'll be okay. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to hear them.
Kia ora, Kathryn. Can I first of all ask that you stop sharing your screen, because at the moment I'm staring at a giant head of me.
Oh sure. Yeah.
It just switched off about a minute or two before you finish your talk. That's lovely. Thank you. We do have some questions that have come over the chat. It looks like both are from Farasat. I don't know, Farasat, do you want to actually ask them directly?
Actually, my voice is not working today, so that's why I put it there. It's my actually question was that till this point in time, how many customers Catalyst have within the New Zealand for Koha and DSpace? And second, just related to that, how much is actually price difference if somebody is planning to migrate? So there are two questions. One is price, other is the service availability. So how that works with here?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we're up to around. Sorry, Farasat, your full voice. We're up to around 100 customers for Koha, and we have loads of conversations about DSpace, but AUT is the only one at the moment that we're supporting actively on their installation. And we've said no to a lot of DSpace inquiries in the past, and we're looking forward to saying yes to them now and making sure everyone knows that that's something we're doing. In terms of price differentiation, so the lowest price sort of hosted services we provide are the ones where there's really no changes to how the product comes straight out of the box. And so, and then the most expensive is where it's a custom installation just for that institution. They've got customizations, integrations, security requirements, hot availability, failover stuff. And honestly, the high end option is like, it's more than 20 times more than the low end option. Like, and the answer to why it's so much more is that we have to do so much more work together to make it work perfectly. So every time we have an integration with another system, or the bigger the organization, there's more training. The organization needs to run the upgrades at a time that suits only them, not at a time Catalyst decides. All those things allow the organization or the library to run things the way they want to run them, and that does come at a cost because it's a custom service, as opposed to the most inexpensive options we provide would be maybe for schools and community groups, or an organization that is perhaps not centered around its library and doesn't have any integration, so they can afford to run straight out the box and not worry that something's going to break. They just can live with it. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say more than 20 times more for the higher one to the lower one.
But
you could even exponential. Yeah.
But still it will be lesser than proprietary softwares. Definitely it
Yeah.
will be, compared to.
Yeah, to get an equivalent service, it's definitely less. I think, and this, maybe I get in trouble for saying it, but when a New Zealand-based company promises to a New Zealand-based organisation that they'll do something under New Zealand's jurisdiction, we do it. Not just because we have a personal relationship and we can come down and knock on your door and have a meeting and get to know each other, but because by law, it's a lot easier to hold a New Zealand-based organisation to account. We do it based on promises and relationships, and it's what we said we'd do, but sometimes it's a lot harder to get what you were promised in a tender from an organization that's based in another country, and they say, oh, it's coming, but you don't necessarily get it in your first implementation like you were promised in the process that you went through. Not sure that answers the question.
Well, there are no other questions at this point. I do actually have a question, but I suspect it's a good one for both you and Kim to answer. So I'll hold it till the end and just hand over the reins now to Kim. Thank you, Kathryn. Kim, it's all yours.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Kathryn. That was really cool project to see as well for a useful case study. I don't really have like a presentation or anything. I aim to be pretty free-flowing and go on whatever tangents are useful for everyone. So maybe I'll just try and pick up on some of the themes that I already heard Kathryn talk about, and I'm just going to paste a list into the chat. I can share my screen as well, hopefully. Let's find out how this goes for me. I'll just try sharing one window. Let's see if that works. Can anyone see my browser? I hope.
Yes, it's coming
Yes.
through lovely and clear.
All right, so I just put this list together. Curated lists are nice to have. It's a work in progress, but just in case anyone, it sort of occurs to me, I'm so in this world of digital repositories, digital library systems, that I forget about, the fact that not everyone has their heads in this stuff all day like I do. And so it's actually sometimes nice just to have a list of things that are already out there that you might not be aware of when you're just looking around for different platforms that can do different things. And obviously this is the kind of these are the kind of products that you would probably go through with a provider like Catalyst if you were trying to search for the right thing, the right tool to use for a particular problem. And that's another advantage I think of open source generally, is that you can have a project like that, like the EAR Rainbow Collection, and working with developers and support staff from Catalyst, you can end up saying, well, okay, let's pick Viewfind. It's an open source discovery layer that's been around for a long time. It's already supported, it already has some institutional knowledge at AUT. We know how to work with it. We know how to plug it into what we want. So that's what we're going to go with. There's no artificial pressure coming on. Oh, well, we need to go with this system because that's compatible with this other proprietary system that we use. You've got so much more flexibility in the different tools, techniques, and platforms or frameworks that you can choose to build what you want. At the end of the day, you're still paying support fees to developers and application support people that are helping you, but you're not paying for IP. You're not paying for this proprietary closed stuff that the provider probably wants to try and lock you into forever, and force other kinds of integrations on you. Everything is very portable and transparent, so I really liked seeing that approach. So just to bring that back to this list of repository platforms, full disclosure, DSpace is the thing that I work on. Probably over 70% of my working week is spent on DSpace repositories, mostly for European institutions at the moment. So that is what I know best, and I've been doing a lot of DSpace 7 development recently. So if anyone's got particular, upgrade or administration questions about DSpace, I'm very happy to answer those. On this list, I've tried to keep an eye on all the other main players. Islandora, probably you've all heard of, and I believe Catalyst has supported this in the past, if not still supporting it.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Yep. So that's basically the Drupal CMS combined with Fedora Commons to provide a kind of DAMS or digital repository as well. It's got historically it's had some advantages over something like DSpace for more complex object modeling and digital asset management. Samvera is really interesting as well. I won't go through the whole list, but hopefully it's there, so you can just click around if you like. But Samvera, I used to think of it as a platform, but it's more of a community or a set of tools that a community maintains right now. So you've possibly heard of some of those tools like Blacklight, which is another discovery layer, a bit like Viewfind, just an open source discovery layer that plugs into a search engine or a repository that you've got on your back end. Hydra, which is the Fedora-based repository end. You can see how those all fit together there. And then there are a few systems in this list that are geared more towards a specific use case. The CCAN and NVIDIA RDM, more about research data management. ePrints is still around. It's probably an example, maybe like DSpace, of a more traditional open access publication repository. And then there are a couple of extensions of DSpace that For Science, who's a DSpace service provider based in Italy, have released, and they're both intended to be, singular turnkey systems as well, but customized for either a cultural heritage or GLAM use case, or a CRIS, the research information system use case. So I've tried to give some links to websites and demos there. If anyone's got any specific questions about any of those, feel free to ask me. But I guess in general, it seems more interesting to me to talk about open source as an option for running things, just picking up on what Kathryn was talking about. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize some of that, some of the advantages you get working with a provider. Let's assume that the costs are somewhat similar. There are several aspects that you're not going to get from commercial providers, which is, the kind of confidence that you can pick your stuff up and move it somewhere else because it's open source software, it's supported, it's self-supporting, it's self-describing. We don't have to buy a license to try and reproduce any of the code. And we know that we own everything that we customize, everything that we create. Furthermore, if we come up with something really cool, some new extension for Viewfind for this collection or something, for example, that can actually be contributed back to Viewfind. Everyone else can take advantage of it, and it's no longer a customization. It's just part of Viewfind now that we're going to get for free with the next upgrade. It actually makes it more sustainable, easier to maintain. There's more reliance as well on open standards, which again helps with things like interoperability, integrations, portability. So, these protocols like OAI, PMH that have been around for a really long time that actually still do a pretty good job. SWORD for submission, maybe not as popular as it used to be, but it's still there. All these protocols, open standards are pretty necessary for the open source software to be able to talk to each other as well. So it all kind of fits together. Ultimately, I think it even fits together in terms of a really long-term preservation plan, because you have to think about the software that's running the repositories that are supposed to be preserving these assets or these objects. One thing that I've been working on as well, just on the side as a bit of a hobby. I don't know if anyone saw my email to the NZ Libs mailing list recently, but I've been working on static HTML site generation. So that is kind of trying to take that maintenance work down to an absolute bare minimum. And there are open source tools that can help produce static websites. Perhaps even a single collection, not the rainbow one in particular, but maybe there's a small museum that's got a collection. They don't have even the resource to contract with a service provider to run a server and actually run a big application that maintains this stuff over time. Just being able to produce a bunch of HTML files with something like Wax. This is the project here that I've been working on. This can produce a site that is a functional, collection of photos and metadata, and it would cost maybe, I don't know, a couple of dollars a year to maintain, to pay the storage costs for S3 or wherever you were storing it. So that's something that I've been interested in lately as well. Not really sure where I was going to take it from here, so I don't know if there's any specific questions or suggestions for tangents that I can go on. I'm trying not to get too nerdy and techie and show you my IDE, because I always do that
Hey,
too
Kim,
much.
I do have a question. At the moment here at the IS library, we are replacing our complete system, very old system, with the OSS-IR WorldShare library management system. So as part of that project, we've decided, because our library never had a digital repository, and we need one to actually also at the same time implement content DM repository system, which is also provided by OCLC. Now we get it for free through the actual Tipuna membership, so through the OCLC agreement with the National Library of New Zealand, because our amount of data is relatively small at this stage. I mean, you know, we don't need to purchase anything additional probably for another few years. So it works really well. And the reason what we've been able to do is to actually connect both systems so that when we upload and create a digital record and content DM with all metadata, actually content DM then automatically pushes the metadata into the WMS WorldShare catalog and creates the catalog record with the link to the digital file in the repository. And it automatically and then pushes it to WorldCat, creates a completely new WorldCat catalog record and assigns the WorldCat number. So that was absolutely phenomenal, and we've tested it and it seems to work really well. Now, my question is, with the open source repository platforms like DSpace, for example, ePrint, is this, so for example, for the libraries who are like on Coham or any other type of library management system, whether it's open source or not, for example, EBSCOfolio, and if they decide, okay, we have DSpace or we want to implement the open source repository platform, would that process of connection between the repository and new digital records and metadata with the actual catalog system, creating new catalog records and so on, is it possible to establish that connection and data feed automatically, or it does or basically something else has to be done to make that connection? Maybe Kathryn would know, because you work with Koha so much and with different libraries, and they all have different repositories and systems. Are those connections possible to create? The reason I'm asking is because I really don't know, and I never had a chance to look into it before or see it. I know we can do it because we work with OCLC, and basically both systems are provided by the same provider. And they speak the WorldCat, but I'm not sure about different situations like those. That's all. Does that make sense? You know.
Yeah. Well, part of my answer there would be probably related back to those open standards and protocols that I talked about. So I know, for example, with Ex Libris systems, that's probably what I know better in terms of the commercial systems, just because that's what Auckland University were using when I was there. So even within those commercial systems, you know, the way that they would integrate with other data sources, or, you know, whether upstream or downstream, was using those pipelines. And I know that there were definitely open standards supported in those, like OAI, which could effectively, you know, harvest metadata from a repository, for example, and that could be how repository records got indexed into a catalog. And, you know, so commercial systems do often, and hopefully always, you know, support those same open standards, because we kind of force them to by virtue of how, you know, common and useful they are to everyone else. But it's not guaranteed. So, you know, you do find, obviously, if you're running two systems that are ultimately, you know, run by OCLC or something, then they're going to have their own preferred way of sharing data between those systems, and it's not necessarily going to use one of those open standards. I know that in terms of getting into WorldCat and stuff, traditionally a digital repository would do that by you know, making sure that it had a really good OAI PMH or other harvestable feed, and make that available to harvesters like WorldCat, and rely on that to get data shared between. I don't know if Kathryn's got any more comments about that.
Oh yeah, I would have said some things Kim said as well, that as long as the open standards are supported and documented, you can always figure out a way. It just depends on how different the proprietary vendors, like whether they put any special sauce on top of the open standard and make it harder to work with, or whether they support it the same way as everyone else.
Yeah, we definitely do work. I mean, both systems connect through or AI standard as well. So we activated the feeds through by actually connecting and making sure OAI standard is activated in both. So that was a bit of a process, and we had to go through several trials to test that, and was a bit of a puzzle to solve, but it did work in the end once we figured out what we needed to do. So I suppose it depends on a commercial system and the way it actually operates, connects to the open source repository system, and that always depends probably from testing and trialing it out and seeing how it works, what needs to be done, I guess. So yeah, I mean, we had to go through the same process. We knew it would work, but we just needed to figure out from our end how, because we actually did it ourselves because we're not paying for it, so we had to implement it ourselves in our team without much help. So that was but it wasn't, it took us probably about 3 days to just connect everything and make it work. So that wasn't too bad, I guess, in the end. So, all right.
I have a question about the topic of the hour, and that's artificial intelligence, AI, and the impact that is having or not having maybe on open source. We're already seeing kind of it infiltrating the proprietary systems. The one that kind of jumps immediately to mind is the smart harvesting that is now being kind of pushed by Ex Libris. And I was wondering whether Kathryn and Kim, whether you wanted to comment on the impact AI is or you suspect will have on open source products.
Well, as an open source developer, and I am like quite passionate about open source, just generally open source software, and I have lots of projects on the go sharing it. It's an interesting thing to think about how I feel about AI from a software engineering, standpoint and licensing, because unlike somebody who does commissioned art or something, who's had all their hard work sucked up by the AI, machines out there and put into some machine learning that is hard to then, figure out where it came from. I basically signed up from day one to let anyone use my code for anything that they want, really. I mean, not exactly, because it is licensed under BSD3, so I don't know. There's probably some interesting legal implications, but I'm quite happy for AI to use my code to figure out, how to generate new code suggestions. So that's from like the software engineering standpoint. I guess there's maybe an interesting side question about like what open access really means in terms of open access research and publishing. Like, okay, we're basically licensing this work to be used and reused in a number of ways. Does that include being used to teach big, large language models? And if it does, like, do we expect some way of gaining attribution or finding out where that data has been used? Yeah.
Thanks, Kim. I'll add on. I think the difference with AI and open source is, AI starts just being like any other little bit of software that it you give it some information and do something with it. And the difference is that if you retain control of the systems that you run, and which you can do with open source and requires data sovereignty, if you retain control of the systems that you run, then you can decide what information you want to share and under what jurisdictions. And when you outsource your systems to a vendor running in another country under a different jurisdiction, you let go of a lot of not just your control, but your understanding, because we don't know the laws of every other country that we work with necessarily. So my end point above kind of the AI bit is I'm always wanting to know who's making money out of this. Like, so if you're giving away your content and you're not receiving any money and someone else is making money out of it, that seems there's something immoral there if an individual's
I think you've just described the entire publishing model in academia, to be honest.
Yeah, sadly. But I'm absolutely agreeing with Kim. Like, we as software developers give away code because it comes back better and enhanced and maintainable from the projects that we work with. But yeah, I just always want to know who's making money, who's benefiting from this, and are we putting anyone at risk by sharing this data? And that's where data sovereignty is, like, bottom line important. So as New Zealand organisations managing data of individuals, we have a big responsibility there not to give that data away in ways that we don't understand or that people didn't sign up for.
Just looking at the time, can I just see if we have any other questions for Kim or Kathryn?
Just one thing, Kim, he touched a little bit, but do you think, as working with the DSpace, with the current financial crunch and all what's happening in the tertiary libraries, is it wise to move to open source, and it can be able within the libraries to support locally these softwares, or should they just stick with the proprietary softwares? What is your thought on that?
Well, I'm always going to give my idealist answer on that, and always advocate for open source, I suppose. And I think Kathryn's done she's already really explained that it's not, the size and scale of the solution might determine the price, but not whether something's open or closed source. There's nothing necessarily more expensive about open source, even if you're working with a service provider. So I'm realistic these days that we don't have teams of developers, sitting around in libraries and other university departments that are able to experiment and do things. Those were fun times, but they are very hard to do budget wise now. I understand that. But I always would still advocate for trying to work with an open source solution, because I just personally think it's more sustainable in terms of making the world a better place. You're going to help other institutions who don't even have the choice of do we try and support an open source product, or do we shop around for a commercial vendor, because they literally have no budget at all. It's just going to be down to some interested academic or librarian who has enough tech knowledge to try and make something work. And the better and easier and more accessible we can make the free open source software, the more those smaller institutions can benefit as well. So that's me with my idealist hat on. If it turns out that the things that everyone in this call wants to achieve somehow seem more difficult through open source software or provider arrangements, then maybe that's a problem that we have to fix, in terms of documentation or making sure that there are people out there offering those services. But yeah, that's just my that's my open source advocacy. I feel it goes along a little bit with my open access advocacy as well. We might as well use the same approach with the systems that we run.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. If there are no other questions, I'll just pause for a second. I'm checking chat. I'm looking. I think, obviously, Kim and Kathryn, you're both more than welcome to take, follow-up questions that people might have about their specific library and their specific situation via email or So, and I really do hope that people do continue this korero. I think this is an interesting, I think, Kim, you're right, we're kind of at a crossroads. I've been very much in the thick of it, where it's around, balancing that, those days where, there was a team of developers sitting sometimes in the library, if not in ITS, dedicating themselves to this sort of thing, is kind of a bygone era. I do think that Kathryn, perhaps in many ways, you represent the future for many of our libraries who want to continue the open source way, but looking at the kind of going to a third-party vendor like yourself in order to support it, rather than relying on our internal IT systems, which are simply just too pressed in order to do so. So I really do hope, and I know, I just want to say from personal experience as well, that Kim is amazing in terms of, especially for anybody running a DSpace repository, but please get in touch with Kim. So any rate, I will now finish with our closing karakia. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te uru tapanui. Kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wārua I te ara tākata. Koiara e rongo, whakairia, aki ki runga. Kia tēnā, hui e, tai ki e. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.